Welcome to LOA Today. I'm Walt Thiessen.
With me today is abundance teacher and money coach, Jody Lynn Craven.
This is your daily dose of happy. We are so happy you decided to join us today.
And once again, I am joined by Joy the cat, who has made it a practice the last 2 weeks to do something he's never done before, and that's to participate in every podcast that we record. So I'm not sure exactly what's going on with that, but maybe it has to do with the fact that we're doing this in the winter, and he's an outdoor cat and can't be outdoors. So I don't know, maybe he's looking for a way to just replace what he can't do. I don't know, whatever it is.
He wants you to entertain him, Walt.
I guess, yeah. Well, for me, entertaining is trying to keep him from walking on the keyboard and knocking out the podcast. If I can accomplish that, I'm doing well.
Oh, perfect.
So we're joined today by Heather Solomon, who is a coach with a very strong emphasis on eliminating limiting beliefs. And that's always a good practice for a coach. I mean, Jody Lynn, you're a coach. You spend a lot of time on that basic subject, right? So this is a good thing for coaches to do, right? Helping to eliminate limiting beliefs. Yeah, it's a good thing. And I love the way that she goes about doing it, because she talks about doing it in terms of changing your story, the narrative, which we love talking about all the time. Right?
Absolutely.
So this is going to be a good conversation. This is going to be really good.
Yeah.
So Heather Solomon, welcome to the program. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thank you for having me. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to do this.
Yeah, we're glad to have you here today. And you got to give us a little bit of the potted biography, how you got to doing this in the first place. Because usually, this is our experience. This is my experience doing this program for the last 12 and a half years. Virtually everybody who gets into a coaching space does so because they ran into something, they found a solution, and they want to share it. Is that true for you too?
Yeah, it is. I like to talk. And then, So that was a good thing. But then what I found was, just through life experience, a lot of people were asking me for my opinion. Not everybody, sometimes I just gave it, but a lot of times they were asking me for my opinion. And most of the time it had to do with marriage and parenting. Mm-hmm. And so I actually wanted to always write a book about it, but I'm not good at that. And so I actually have a friend who started a podcast several years ago, and she had a ghostwriter start her book based on her podcasts. And I was like, oh, that I could do. So I started a podcast because then I didn't have to keep it in order. And then people just kept asking me more and more, just different questions. And so then it's just elevating into, it's turning into the next thing. I feel like it's always just turning into the next thing. And so then it's turning into coaching, and it'll be me being your girlfriend who tells you like it is. So it's not necessarily marriage counseling. It is just me being completely honest that it could potentially be your fault. So.
Wow. No, there's a shocker right there.
Yeah. Yeah. So
and for those who are wondering, yes, I did find my proper mic just now. That's why you hear the change in voice that happened. But I didn't realize I was connected to the wrong mic. So sorry about that. But yeah, so you basically found out that you could help your friends. That's a nice way to get going.
Yeah. I have another business that I also do, but I have a lot of younger people in that business. And what I found was a lot of them were either getting married or they were a lot younger. And I'm 53. And so going back, a lot of them were in their 20s and 30s and going through the same things I was going through. I just figured it out by now. Not everything. I think my 80-year-old self will look back at me and go like, you had nothing figured out. But you had it figured out and you just don't. And I don't have it all figured out, but I at least knew how to battle some of the things they're battling now, and that just comes with time and experience. And so, that's where it started. I just wanted to get my voice out there. Maybe somebody would hear something that would serve them. And then, like I said, it just keeps spiraling. So it's been super fun.
That's excellent. Yeah. I'm 67 and I've discovered that I know even less now than I did when I was 57. So I totally understand what you're talking about.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. I could look back at this one day and be like, you, that was just a bunch of crap. Like you had no idea what you were talking about. But, I figure if people don't want to hear it, or if I'm not their cup of tea, because I'm not going to be everybody's cup of tea, they can just hit next on the next podcast. They don't have to listen to it,
Yeah, sure.
But I have gotten really good feedback on it. And so it's just kept me going.
Plus, if you make it sound good, it almost doesn't even matter if it actually is good. I mean, if it sounds good, it's good enough.
Yeah, that's just it. Like, you just articulate it well, and people
That's
go,
right.
"Oh, okay. She has a podcast. She must know what she's talking about."
Well,
That's
actually, I
right.
should qualify that, I suppose, because I've been having an interaction with a guy on Facebook. His big complaint is he can't get the hot girl. No matter what he does, he can't get a date with a hot girl. No matter who the hot girl is, he just can't do that. And he's giving me all the reasons why he can't do that. And so I'm saying to him, well, we got a mindset issue going on here. He says, well, that's a bunch of bullshit. And where do you go with that one? I don't know what you do when somebody is just blocked out on that one. So maybe that's a topic for another day.
Yeah. Well, I guess he keeps telling himself he can't get a hot girl. So if you keep saying it, you're right.
Yeah.
Right? Like, you are what you say. So yeah, you can't get a hot girl. Change that story, right?
Yeah. Didn't Henry Ford say, if you think you can, you can, and if you think you can't, you can't, and you're both right.
Either way, you're right. Yeah.
Either way, you're right. So I would just say you're right. Good luck.
I actually tried that on him. He rejected it.
So you're not right, and I'm right, and you have a mindset problem.
Yeah, there's definitely a mindset problem going on somewhere in there.
Yeah, I think so. It's pretty safe to say.
I mean,
I kind of threw the book at him for the next part. I said to him, all right, I want you to get out a piece of paper and I want you to put the word negative up at the top. And I want you to list all the things that are negative in your life, not just your dating life, but in your work life and your personal life, your family. Do you have a favorite sports team? Everything that's wrong with them. Are you into politics? What are your political issues? What are the things that are wrong there? Just list them all and number them. And then when you're all done, get out another piece of paper, write positives, and see if you can write down as many as you wrote negatives. Because if you can't, you got a mindset issue.
Yeah, that's a fact. I heard somebody tell me once that for every negative thing you say, you have to say 3 positive things afterward. And that's exhausting.
Oh, yeah.
Because it does stop you in your tracks before you're about to say something. Because if you have to come up with something 3 things positive, you're just like, I'm not even going to bring it up.
It's not worth the breath.
It's not worth it. It's not worth it. I'm not even going there. So.
Of course, there's that initial thing. You actually have to admit there's a problem. And if you don't get past that one, that's going to be a challenge, no matter how you say it.
How about admitting that you're the problem?
Oh, no. You can't go there. Oh, wait, hold on a second. It can't be me. It's got to be them.
It's got to be. Especially when it comes to marriage, right, Heather? It's always your husband's fault.
It's always. Oh, my gosh. So actually, I'm going to make this into an episode because my daughter was on a FaceTime with me this morning. She's 24. And my husband came in the kitchen before he was going to work, because I work from home. He works away from home. And he goes and he sets a dish in our sink. And it just hit me wrong. I don't know why, but so me with the marriage podcast actually screw up all the time. But I just said, oh, are you going to put another dish in the sink that I'm going to clean? And so my daughter's on FaceTime and she's like, oh, no. And he looked at me and he goes, interesting you say that, because these are all your dishes. So then I had to suck it back, apologize, do all the things, say, I don't know. I'm like, I'm so sorry I did that. But I'm like, I'll get him, don't worry. He's like, no, I'm going to wash your dishes right now that you just complained about. I was like,
boom.
Oops. So I did have to admit I was wrong this morning. Yeah. So a little suck up and then it was over. But I think that's the biggest thing, is actually being able to do that. Yeah. Being able to go, you know what, I was wrong on that. And I'm super sorry I did that. And then not making an excuse why you did it. Because once you say, I'm sorry, but you just negate the I'm sorry. So I just said, I'm really sorry I did that, and walked over and tried to be charming, and it worked. So
it worked.
It was fine. Everything was fine.
I'm just blown away at how, when we're in the middle of a mindset issue, we have trouble acknowledging that we're in a mindset issue. That's really fascinating, because to me it shows our blind spot. We have this big blind spot about something. Everybody else can see it except us. Yeah. And genuinely, I mean, it's not like, we're deliberately trying to hide ourselves. We literally can't see it when we're in the middle of it.
Yeah.
I find that really fascinating.
I think a lot of people are that way. I think a lot of people always look outward instead of in to see what the problems are. And I remember hearing years and years ago, if the whole world is crazy, you might need to take a look in the mirror, you know, and it stuck with me, you know, no matter what the issue was. I'm like, if everybody around me is nuts, it could be me. And being able to do like a complete self-check is it's hard to do. It's hard to admit that you're the problem, but it's very freeing too, because then you know you can control it and change it.
Right. Once you can break through on that. Yeah, that's a big breakthrough. You're right.
Yeah, because then you're like in control of the whole situation. It's different when everybody else is actually nuts. You can't actually control that. But when you're the one that is, you're like, ooh, now I can fix it, you know, and there is happy after that. But
I have to still kind of justify sometimes by saying the whole world is crazy, but from their perspective, I'm crazy. So I'm happy to be crazy.
Yeah, this is true.
So, it's kind of a way of sliding past it. Well, I don't have to take responsibility for this thing, whatever it is.
Well, yeah, just choose your crazy, right? Like if I choose your level of craziness.
Absolutely, yeah. You know, you can slide by almost anything on that one.
Oh yeah, and I do. I think everybody does. Yeah, we all have our temporary moments of insanity, but then just can't let that go on for too long.
It's also interesting how we as humans will play little mind games like that as long as possible to make the act of identifying ourselves as the cause of our own problems the last choice. Because even if we have a sense of it going on, we'll still make it the last choice.
Oh yeah.
We'll try all the other options first. You would think that we'd save time, but we don't. I don't know. We just don't do it.
I think it's because it's hard to look in the mirror and be like, I'm the problem. I'm the one that's causing this, especially when you're in that heat of the moment in an argument or something like that. I have a really good example of this. A couple of weeks ago or a month ago or something, I do sleigh rides with my dad in my spare time. It's kind of like my part-time hobby with my dad. Anyway, so I had a long day doing that, and I was like, you know, just cold. I live in Canada, so it's freaking cold. It's winter, and I've had a long day, and I'm hungry, and I come home, and I texted my husband to see, should I lock the gate? Because it's a manual thing. Like, you got to get out of your car, and you got to close the gates and actually physically lock them. And he never answered me. And so I was like, okay, well, maybe his friend is still over or whatever. And then I come inside, and I don't know, he had a few sodas or something. So he was running around the house and he was trying to be silly. And I was instantly angry, like mad, pissed off, literally like height of anger. Walk back out the door because I've got, you know, I'm bundled up to be outside with the sleigh rides and stuff. So I'm like, well, he's clearly in his pajamas. He's not going to go to close the gate. And I'm like, for, you know, F's sakes, like, I guess I'll do it. So I leave the house, get back into my car, get all the way back to the gate, realize I've forgotten my keys. Come all the way back. So now I'm even more angry. Like, I'm just steaming. I grab my keys, I slam the door, I go, I lock the gate, I come back, and he's like, why are you so mad at me? And I'm like, because I've had a long day and I didn't want to freaking lock the gate and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like just blowing my top. And he's like, so why didn't you just ask me to go and do it then? I'm like, well, you're in your pajamas. You're not going to want to do it. And he's like, I'd do anything for you. If you just asked me, I would have done it. And I was like, frick, I'm so sorry. I was just hungry. And he's like, okay, I can see that. Let me make you something to eat. It had nothing to do with him. In my mind, I had assumed that he wouldn't want to get dressed and go and do it because it's cold outside and I was just outside, and you know, that it would be this big thing. In reality, I put all of those thoughts into my own head, and I made myself miserable and angry and caused the fight. Not him. He didn't even say a word.
Yeah.
Isn't that amazing? You don't even have to say a word. You can just build it all up yourself.
Totally. That's not the first time I've done it. You know, I feel like my husband is my training ground on all of the boundaries and everything in between. If I want to learn something about myself, I just look at where I get irritated with him, and I'm like, oh, sore spot found.
Well, I always ask people too, I'm like, just ask yourself, are you stressed, tired, or hungry before you react? Like before you're like just about to kill him, you know, I'm like, are you stressed, tired, or hungry? Because the hungry one, I'm like, just grab a snack before you kill him and then decide, do you still want to? Because it might be gone, you know, and it's a real thing, especially for women. I don't know though so much for men. I can only speak for women. But
oh, it's definitely true for men.
Is it true for men?
We may try to hide it, but it's definitely true.
Oh, I lose all sense of like, I don't know, reality, normalcy, like patience, kindness, everything goes out the door when I'm beyond the hungry point.
Like I think everybody should carry a beef jerky. Just carry beef jerky in your purse or in your glove box, no matter what, so that before you walk in the house, you have a snack.
Have you heard of the HALT acronym? HALT?
No.
Hungry, angry, lonely, tired. If you're any of those four things, beware of your actions.
There should be a checklist when you walk in the door. So you know if it is, and your husband can look at it quick and just take cover.
Exactly. I used to, because in my, so I have a coaching business, and then I also have a financial brokerage. And in my financial brokerage, I'm the powerhouse. I'm the boss. I teach other people, train other people. I have clients, all of that stuff. So I'm always in this really masculine role. And when I first started dating my husband and when we first moved in together, I had to learn to transition. So I would literally come home from being a boss babe, and I would be like, hi, honey, love you. And I would literally go upstairs. I would sage myself. I would shower. I would do a little bit of yoga, just like Zen, so that I could be the partner that I wanted to be. Because in that, I needed, he's a very masculine man, and there's only 2 seats in the car. And I wanted to sit in the feminine seat and be taken care of by him. But I really struggled with that, being a powerhouse in my everyday life, to learning to soften a little bit when I came home.
Yeah. And it can be as simple as like, can you, even though you can open the pickle jar by yourself, you could just be like, can you, you know, just to give him a little bit of something, just a nudge, right? In that direction. But
you know, we love that. I just wanted to let you know, we love that when you ask for that.
Do you?
Exactly.
Oh God, it feels so good. Yeah. Again, another thing we'll never admit, but oh yeah.
We're like, I'm so small and meek. Could you please open the pickle jar for me?
Absolutely.
Yeah. It is.
Well, it appeals to the male role of being the protector.
Yeah, and that's the thing. People have got to be able to play a role, right?
Yeah.
Like I did an episode not long ago on the yin and the yang in a relationship, and how actually it's super important to both have your role. And my husband's super quiet, and unless he's in like his really safe surroundings with his friends that he knows, but he's a lot more introverted than I am, and I'm super extroverted where only one person gets the show, right? And so I don't want him to upstage me. And so it's not even just with the masculine and feminine, but it's also with like that kind of energy too. So it's really being able to know what your partner brings to the table and what he also needs you to bring to the table for him, you know? Yeah. And I look at, but if he knew, so my husband knew I was a strong personality. Obviously your husband knew you were a strong personality, and that was attractive, right? So obviously you don't have to bury all of it, but you do have to give them that little bit so that they feel like a protector.
Well, yeah, because the way that I operated before him in every other relationship, and the reason why it failed essentially, was because I operated like I didn't need anybody. I don't need anybody to help me. I don't need anybody to take care of me. I got this on my own. I am an independent, strong boss, babe, lady, whatever. Like, yeah, I don't need you. But I realized that I wanted that partner. I wanted somebody, and I needed to make that space for somebody to help me with certain things. I don't want to do it all. I don't want to be by myself, but it took that, understanding and allowing him to step in and take care of me to really, solidify that.
Well, I think it's important that you recognize that there's so many people who struggle so hard with that. They don't know how to give up any part of themselves, right, for the other person. And it causes just such conflict when, why get married if you don't need the other person? It's like, if you want to be in a relationship, be in a relationship. If you want to be single because you got it, then be single. There's nobody says you have to do otherwise.
Really great points. Really great points. You're making me do all these little reflections going on in my back of my mind in my own life.
Yeah, and that's what brought me to my podcast, right? It was like, and now the coaching coming. But I just think there's so many people who aren't, well, where we even started, being able to look within to see, like, what do I need to change about myself so that I can be better, or a better version of myself for someone else, or who do I need to be so that this can all work? Because we all have to give a little bit. We can't walk into something and be like, take me 100% as I am, because we're not all perfect or great or 100. We all have growth to do. And it's just great when you guys can grow together instead of one growing and then the other one staying put.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yes. Very definitely. And what Jody Lynn was talking about too, how it wasn't just about being able to be there for him in the relationship. It's what she needed out of the relationship, knowing herself well enough to know what she needed to do in order to be, like, what was the phrase you used? Be the better version of herself. I mean, that's a big, big part of it. And it's one of the hardest parts, because again, that's where we have to acknowledge that we could be doing something better, that we thought we were doing just fine.
Yeah. Yeah, that's huge. It's a huge that you recognize that. Because
I had a lot of shitty relationships, and then none of them worked out. And I was like, okay, common denominator, me, girl.
You had practice. That's good.
I must be the problem. And I mean, like, I look back and was like, oh yeah, that's not a very nice thing to do. The person that I was before, I always tell my husband this too. The person that I was like a year ago or a year before I met him, I will always say, you wouldn't have liked that girl. You wouldn't have liked her because she had no space for you, and wouldn't have come to a partnership with you. She would have tried to just tell you what to do. And then when you didn't, because he's also a very strong personality, that would have ended.
Yeah. We have very similar stories. I always said the same thing. My husband would not have liked the version of me that I was before I met him. And I had to do some growing. And I didn't particularly like her that much either. Now that I look back, I thought I was fine, but obviously I knew that there was some room to grow, and there always is. There's always room to grow. But, I was fortunate enough that, he was really patient. I was so fortunate he was patient, because I had zero patience and he had a ton. And we also lived apart for the first year and a half of our courting. So I lived in Wisconsin and he lived in Iowa. And so it was long distance for the first year and a half, which maybe gave us that time. And this is before text messages or cell phones or email or any of that. This is like, we had to call and we had to keep it quick because it was super expensive.
Long distance, yeah.
Yeah, long distance, super expensive. Yeah. So we had to, it was a whole different time, but I think that was the time period that allowed us both to just ease our way into things. So, yeah, he didn't get a chance to see me all at once. So that's
in doses.
Yeah. I always tell him, like, there's a special place in heaven for him because I'm a lot. I'm a lot to handle, and people like him get a special place in heaven. Yeah.
I love that.
Very nice. I like that. Yeah. I also like the fact that you drew in to the conversation the difference between living in the 20th century and the 21st century. I mean, we've talked about that many times in a lot of different ways here on the podcast, but I don't think you can revisit it often enough because it has affected everything, especially relationships. I mean, it's hard to point to one thing and say, well, it affected that more than anything else, but I think relationships are going to be pretty close to the top of my list on that.
I would agree. And that's on all relationships, not just romantic.
All of them. Oh, yes.
All of them. People don't need, I mean, faces are in phones. People don't know how to have conversations as well as they used to. If I wanted to, in my day, which I always hate
My day.
but in my day, we would be on the phone with our friends for hours. You know what I mean? And then we got call waiting. So that was super cool when that came, call waiting, because then you could have two friends.
Yeah.
And you didn't just get a busy signal. But, you know, kids don't even pick up the phone now if you call them. There's a certain generation of even the people that I work with that if I call them, they're like, why is she calling? Like, it's terrifying to them that I would actually like, I'm like, this is so much faster. Just pick up the phone. Yeah. But it affects relationships big time. And I kind of wish some of it would just be taken away, even though I don't know what I'd do without it now. We'd figure it out, you know, but I wish, you know, some of it was taken away so that people knew how to build those relationships a little bit more organically, just through a phone or through a computer.
And yet I think there's also some reason to believe that, and I think this can happen without losing it entirely. I think there's some reason to believe that we're already moving in that direction.
There could be, yeah. I mean, people are kind of getting tired of it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there is a longing for connection that doesn't really happen for a lot of people in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
And it's not true in all cases. I mean, when I compare myself now to the pre-technology era, I'm much more outgoing now, mainly because I can reach out on the internet. So it actually helped me overcome my introversion. But it also has a tendency to work the flip direction, meaning that just by having it out on the internet, you can keep it all at arm's length. You don't have to get really close to somebody.
That's
Which,
true.
of course, as an introvert is something you really desperately want anyway. You really want that closeness. So, and that's just for somebody who has introversion. I mean, there are lots of different kinds of personality types out there that are going to have their own versions of why it's important to have the older style connections. But I think the bottom line is more and more people are recognizing that there's at least something missing. They may not know what it is, particularly if they're younger. They may not know what it is, although I think more and more younger people are recognizing that it is a kind of a disconnect that happens in our online conversations that we have with each other. So it's got a good side and it's got a bad side. The good side is we connect a lot more. The bad side is we connect a lot less. I mean, it's both in the same sentence, really.
Yeah, it's a little of both. I know my children, I have a 31-year-old son and a 24-year-old daughter, and neither of them are on social media. I mean, they are, but they don't like to post. Even my son, he's like, Mom, don't post any photos, because I'm on social media way more than they are. You know, I'm also like, I have reasons to be on because I'm trying to promote different things.
Sure.
But you know, he's like, well, you're not promoting me. So, you know, kind of it's interesting. Yeah, he does not want to be on it. You know, his wife isn't on it. They post like once a year. And it's crazy how I feel like there's this big leaning to like not necessarily being on it as much as people used to be. Or there's a lot of people who just like scroll, but don't post, you know?
Yeah, lurkers, I believe they're called. Yeah.
What are they?
Lurkers.
Lurking from the sidelines of the life.
Yeah. And they're like, I'm not on social media, but then you see them like on all of your stuff because you can see their name. I'm like, yeah, I bet you are.
You're there.
You're there, but you're not there.
Right. Yeah. So yeah, I do. You're right. It definitely has hindered relationships, but hopefully we are on the upswing. And
so I'm curious though, because both of your children, your adult children, are not very much online for their communication. Are they developing offline relationships better?
Well, you know, my daughter's in college, and you know, I always say my daughter was a gymnast, and so like her whole life, and then she was a collegiate gymnast for a while too before COVID, but you know, so her social life was affected by that pretty much because she was always at practice, you know. But now, like, if she has any relationships with anyone, it is because she has met them face to face. Even her boyfriend, is somebody she met at a wedding. It wasn't somebody she met on online dating or anything like that. And my son met his wife in college, you know, so, and all of his friends are from face to face. The only thing that the internet does for him now is helps him stay in touch with his buddies from college. You know, that's about what it does, is it helps him stay there. You know what I mean? But it's not like they just keep up with each other that way because they all live in different states now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like that. First of all, I like it because it reverses the narrative that says the younger generation are only connected online. Well, not so much.
No, not all of them. I mean, I think there's a huge portion of them. And I know a lot of my girlfriends' kids are not online, or they don't post very often. So I myself am like, what is that age group that is so active in it? Like, I think my age group is probably more popular on Facebook, and they post more stuff there. But then the big Instagram and the TikTokers and all that kind of stuff, is it 30 to 40? Is it, I don't know.
I'm not sure it's an age group, to be honest.
No,
I think it's more of personality types and mindset again. I mean, what's your mindset?
Yeah. You know, so I know there's a lot of kids. I mean, there's so many people trying to be influencers, you know, like that's what they want. And I wish that they would, maybe with TikTok being taken down for 10 minutes and possibly, you know, maybe that would be something that would discourage them. But if that's a way to make money, people are going to do it.
Mm-hmm.
It's an interesting trade-off that happens there, because there are also stories of people that I've heard, particularly from my other co-hosts like Jody Lynn. One of them is a gentleman named Joel Elston, who is a life coach. And he talks about how he's had clients who have become famous Instagram influencers and done so by creating essentially false personas of themselves. And they're dealing with the disconnect and how they really can never live up to the persona that they've created online. And so it negatively affects their self-esteem. They don't feel like they're good enough for the people they created.
For the people they don't know. Isn't that they're you know, they're living up to an image for people they don't know.
Right.
So that's the part that always gets me with Instagram and Facebook and all of those, is you don't know these people. And you're so concerned about what they think of you.
And assuming what they think of you too. Yeah. There's trolls for sure, but not everybody puts in their 2 cents. So you really have no idea what people are thinking most of the time. You're just making it up.
Yeah. And so I always say that people are so busy thinking about themselves that they're not thinking about you. You know, I'm like, they're so worried about what other people are thinking about them that they're not busy actually thinking about you. So I'm like, don't worry about what they're thinking. It doesn't matter, you know.
That's a bit of a shock the first time that you gain that realization, though. Right? Because up until then, you made the assumption, well, everybody is, I mean, I know exactly what they think about me because I think about it all the time.
Yeah. But they're not thinking about it. Yeah. They might see your Instagram post, but then they scroll right past it and go to the next reel, you know, and they're done with you. Like, they're done in a second. Some people just like to engage and be nasty, but, you know, on the most part, you know, I like to see people that like to be actually engaged and kind, but they don't care what you're doing. People really don't care what you're doing, you know?
No.
Isn't it interesting also how, especially with TikTok, I mean, you've also got it with Instagram and even to a small degree with Facebook, but particularly with TikTok, it's about escalating it up another level so you can get that attention that you weren't getting before. We always have to find a way to bring it up one more level, make it one more level of extreme or over the top or in some way, you know, bigger and badder and broader than anybody else is doing.
I have to say, I'm not even on TikTok.
I'm not either. I just know about it.
Okay. So I was like, am I the only one that's not on TikTok? I just had a couple friends tell me that they were surprised I wasn't and that I need to get on it. I'm like, I feel like I'm on enough stuff. I don't need one more thing. Yeah.
I thought I'd get off of them. I'm getting less and less involved. I have a LinkedIn account I haven't touched in months. I occasionally visit Facebook about once or twice a week. I can't remember the last time I did Instagram. I don't even have a TikTok account, and I'm trying to figure out how to cut that down. I mean,
Exactly. I love TikTok.
do you?
Why do you love TikTok?
Man, I like the stories. I get
Mm.
caught up in the stories, and I get caught up in like looking at what else is going on in the world. So a lot of my feed is like some political stuff, different things going on that way. But I mostly like the stories. Like I don't know if you guys have heard of the Karen Reed case in Massachusetts.
Oh,
I
yeah.
was so enthralled with that. Like it's just a good story.
I haven't seen it. I'm gonna have to look it up. Karen Reed.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a murder case, wasn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, I live near enough that I actually picked up a little bit of it, even though I don't follow it. But yeah.
Oh,
I mean, I'm aware that was really big. All the Boston newspapers were carrying it every day and so forth.
Mm-hmm. And there were so many TikTokers making like little like a mini series about all the updates and different things that were happening. I like that. And I think I'm not a huge fan of I want to be an influencer. My niece wants to be an influencer. She's like 6. She's like, I want to be an influencer and a YouTube star. And it was really funny because we were sitting around the table or whatever. And we're like, well, what are you going to have like a YouTube show about or whatever? And I don't know. I just want to be rich. And then my husband's like, oh, yeah. Did you know your auntie has a YouTube show too? And she's like, you do? And I'm like, yeah, I do. And she's like, are you rich?
Are you rich?
No. It's a little bit more complex than what you're thinking. Like you just, and she's like, maybe you don't know how to do it. And I'm like, thanks. Yeah. Obviously I don't know how to do it because whatever, but I like following people who seem to be real. I mean, I have no idea because they're only showing you what you think, but the stories. And then I like the learning about like different home remedies and people like teaching me recipes and like that kind of stuff, seeing their life in that way. But it's really interesting to think about it in terms of our context of our conversation and beliefs and stories. Because, you know, I've had a branding coach and I've had this coach and that coach and whatever. And back in the day, and for my coaching company, at least, the branding coach that I was working with was like, you have to wear this. You're talking about money and luxury and la, la, la. And I have literally been stuck on that ever since because like the way that she dressed me, the way that my photos look, the places that we were at, that kind of stuff, that is a part of me. Like I am professional and I do deal with money and, you know, all of those things. And I'm also a farm girl. So like in the summer, you're going to find me in jeans and a t-shirt and a baseball hat and probably like muck boots or something. And I'm going to be dirty. And so I haven't been able to get past that story of this is how you need to be seen to be successful and transition it to or incorporate it into this is who I am. Like some days I'm going to show up in a t-shirt, you know, Walt. Some days it's going to be a hoodie and other days I'm going to look really professional. But my life is not just one thing. So
well, if you were here in Iowa, you would know that farming is the most lucrative in Iowa. So like next to the county next to us is Grundy County, and that has the wealthiest zip code or the wealthiest county, and it's because of the farming. So, I mean, it goes hand in hand. You know what I mean? If you want to show wealth and you want to show like success, go to Grundy County, and they're all in the jeans and the boots and the t-shirts, and they're farming, and they have the manure on and all of that. So, you know,
they're some of the richest people. Yeah.
They are. They're ridiculously wealthy, you know, ridiculously wealthy. And so, and you wouldn't know it, you know, but they're always the ones too, that when something happens in the community, they're the first ones to show up with aid and money and stuff like that. So they really take community seriously. But yeah, so there isn't like a one size fits all success look, you know.
Absolutely.
Hey, Jody Lynn,
it's a story.
I love how you very successfully managed to bring us back to narrative and storytelling, which is Heather's wheelhouse. Well done.
Thank you. I've learned from the best. Wow.
I mean, seriously, I was listening like, wow, that's really good.
It's like she's done this before.
Yeah, a few times.
Yeah.
That's right.
I know. I think it's important for people to understand that stories are, I think, I was on a podcast the other day and they asked me, how do you know when it's time to rewrite your story? Right? Like, how do you know when that is? And I simply just said, anytime. I think everybody should do a self-check constantly. And if you love what you see in the mirror, if you are so pumped about the direction of your life, then keep going. If there's some tweaks you want to do, rewrite those. If you look in the mirror and you are not happy with X, Y, or Z part of your life, rewrite it. I mean, that's the beautiful part of it. Like, you actually have the ability at any point in your life to take 100% ownership and control of your life and just do it and just move forward. We don't have to wait for somebody else to show up. We don't have to wait for the stars to align. We don't have to wait for Monday or for June. We literally can take control of it today and just go, this is not what my story is going to look like. I'm going to rewrite that today. And then you just take the steps to do it.
You make that sound so easy.
So easy. Just a breeze.
I think it's simple, but maybe not so much easy, because maybe there's some things to unpack, but
yeah,
just simple.
Well, that's just it. It's like, what don't I like? Right. And so if you find out what you don't like, then you go like, well, how do I fix that? Or who do I know that can help me fix that? Because sometimes you can't do it on your own. Sometimes you need guidance or you need assistance, And so I think just being aware, I think awareness is the biggest key to it. And so once you start becoming aware to the pieces of your life that aren't what you wanted, then you can redesign it. But, I didn't know how to do certain things in my life. I didn't grow up with a father figure in my life. So I didn't know. I remember years ago, weird story, but I was watching my daughter play with my son, or with my husband. So they were wrestling. And I used to get so mad. I used to get so jealous of the relationship that they had, or even jealous, like when our son and he would wrestle. Cause I was like, well, why aren't you paying that attention to me? Like, I just didn't understand it. And then one day when I was trying to dive into like, why am I getting so mad? Because it was a me problem. It was clearly a me problem. I realized I had no idea what a father and child relationship looked like.
Or felt
and I
like.
didn't, I've never seen it. Right. And so finally I was looking at it and I didn't recognize it to be the most healthy, the most wonderful thing. And once I figured it out, I was like, oh, so this is good. This is not about ignoring me and my needs. This is about like being an incredible father. But it took me figuring that out. And then I had to kind of dive into a little bit of that, like why didn't I recognize that? Why did it take me so long? But I mean, it caused a lot of conflict for a while until I figured it out. But I knew something was wrong, and I knew it was wrong with me. I just couldn't. So even at that time, I couldn't put my finger on what it was, but I knew that there was a trigger in there. And I was like, why am I so mad that they're so happy? But then I figured it out, and then we lived happily ever after that.
Have you always?
That's where the advantage about coaches, right? I mean, a coach helps draw that out of you.
Yeah. So what was that, Jody?
Have you always been that way, Heather, where you have this like different sense of awareness, like, oh, that triggered me? Or how did you cultivate that in your life?
Good question.
I think it was a bunch of things. I think it was a bunch of, I knew where I wanted to be in my life. I wasn't quite sure how to get there. When I was super young, like 22, 23 years old, I started listening to Dr. Laura Schlesinger. I don't know if you know who that is.
Yeah.
Do you know who that is, Walt?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Okay. So she's a TV or a radio personality. She has a radio show. She's had it for obviously 30 plus years.
Yeah.
Long time. And she's all about marriage and child raising. And she tells it like it is. And she's super abrupt. And she was so good. And I remember listening to a lot of it. And I remember a lot of times when a caller would call in and ask her a question, and I was like, yeah, he's wrong. And, and Dr. Laura would spin it in a way and make me see it in such a different light that I was like, oh, she was wrong. I never even looked at it that way, And so when I started doing that, I started constantly kind of looking at things when I found myself in a spin, when I found myself constantly angry about a certain situation or constantly having conflict with somebody, I had to start going like, what is it? Because it can't always be their fault. You know what I mean? And I'd always heard, well, there's one side and there's the other side, and then there's truth somewhere in the middle. Like there's always two sides and then truth in the middle. So I think I went on a journey very early to find that truth in the middle. And it didn't always play out perfectly. Sometimes it took me a long time. I mean, you guys, my daughter was probably in middle school before I figured out that I was being a total idiot. It took me a long time, but I knew it was me. I knew it was a me issue. I just couldn't figure out what it was. And when I did figure it out, obviously it was completely life-changing, because then I was like, oh, this is actually really fun to watch. But I've always kind of had the ability to see that I was having an issue. I just wasn't sure how to fix the issue. And so I had to kind of, I have so many books and so many books over there. And I was the girl that listened to radio talk shows, not music. And so I was always listening to something. And years ago, one of my girlfriends asked me, like, what's your favorite genre? And I literally was like, talk radio, like something. And she thought I was kidding. And I was like, I'm not. Like, I don't listen to the radio for music. And I still really don't. I really am listening to podcasts or books. It's just kind of always been my thing, even long before it was popular.
That's cool.
I like that. Very good. Yeah. I was kind of reflecting on my own patterns regarding who's at fault. And it took me a long time to even let go of the idea of finding fault. I was one of, so many people do the same thing. We're no matter what it is, if something goes wrong, somebody must be at fault. That's the mindset. And so all you have to do is just identify who's at fault, and now the whole world starts to make sense. At least that's what the theory was. In practice, it didn't actually work out that nicely, but in theory, it was great.
Well, and that's the thing. Like, as soon as you have to prove somebody wrong, if I'm so stuck on the fact that I'm right and you're wrong, one of you has to be wrong, and I'm taking your power. So I'm taking your power the minute that I have to, like, bring you down so that you can accept and admit how awful you were. You know what I mean? And that's a power struggle, really. And when I listened to Dr. Laura when I was quite young, one of the things she always said, and it always stuck with me, is, do you want to be right or do you want to be happy? And there's so many things that we will.
She was the originator of that, wasn't she? I
think she is the originator
of that. The person who said that, yeah.
Yeah, I do think she is.
No, I'm pretty sure that was my dad.
Oh, it was your dad? Oh, okay.
You're right.
My dad used to say that to me all the time. Also, it was something when I was a kid that and the Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Like, he explained it to me, but never told me what Maslow's hierarchy of needs was. He just said there's this hierarchy of needs, and then told me. So I started into personal development in my early 20s. I honestly thought my dad made that stuff up. So.
Well, maybe he taught Dr. Laura.
Maybe.
It's entirely possible. I mean, she's like 80 or something now. So.
No. It was probably her, but
yeah. Hey, you're not the only one. I mean, I've had numerous co-hosts on the show over the years. I think I counted them up. There were over 40, 50 of them, something like that, over the 12 plus years I've been doing this. One of them, David Strickle, who you've met, Jody Lynn, is a channeler. And when David came onto the show, I'm trying to remember how this sequence worked. And I just lost the context of what I was saying. What were we just talking about? I just lost what we were talking about.
Right or happy.
Oh, well, yeah, but there was something else off of that.
And then my dad made that.
Oh, and your dad, yes, and your dad being the sorcerer. That's right.
Yeah.
David, when he was very, very young, had developed his ability to connect to source almost effortlessly. And he literally thought he had invented the concept of law of attraction. And he found out later on that other people had been talking about it decades before him. He was broken. Like, no, that can't be. I invented that.
Like, yeah, you did.
Yeah.
Good job. Thank you.
Good job, right?
Thank you for that.
And of course, he laughs at it now, but yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, we believe these things because that was what our experience was.
Yeah.
It makes total sense we would draw those kinds of conclusions.
I wish I was the one that came up with some of this stuff, but I'm just glad that I heard it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm glad I heard it, and I'm not always great at it. You know, I'm not always perfect at it, but I work at it. I work at trying to do that, you know? And I'd rather not be angry at my husband. I'd rather just accept the fact that those were my dishes in the sink and not try to fight. I'm like, no, that spoon is yours. That spoon is yours.
By the way, just out of curiosity, at one point I decided to do a little research to find out how far back the term law of attraction goes. It dates back to the 1860s.
Really?
I had no idea it went back that far. Yeah, 1860s.
Wow.
It was actually the first known use of the phrase was in a book by a Russian immigrant to the U.S. who wrote a book. I don't remember what the name of the book was, but she used the phrase in there, and it meant something similar to what we mean today when we use that phrase. So that's the first known record of it.
Wow.
Wow.
Yeah, it's been around.
It's been around. Yeah. Well, that's the nature of universal truths, really. Jody Lynn, you talk about that a lot because you're a channeler, right? And the information you get is in some ways qualitatively similar to what other people come up with, but you receive it. It comes through to you in your way of thinking, in your way of understanding, based on your background, your frame of reference, your values, and so forth. And so it feels real to you in a huge way, right?
Absolutely. And I think, and different and unique, because I mean, we can all put a different spin on things. And I think that that's important. And that's one thing that social media has done well, is giving you an opportunity to hear and see the same thing, but said and done a different way that might make more sense to whoever's watching it.
And I can speak from personal experience and say that even though you may be touching on subjects others have touched on, when I hear you do it in your channeler mode, when you put your channeler hat on and you start doing it, stuff comes through. Yeah, I've heard it before, but there's always a new quality to it that I hadn't thought of, that I hadn't quite, the perspective shifts.
Absolutely.
Right? And that perspective tells us new things just by having a slightly different take on something. Yeah.
Well, and I think that's really the context or like the deeper context of what we're talking about here in rewriting your story. And that, if you could change the way you perceive whatever's happening in your life so that it is more aligned with how you want to feel or the end result that you want, like happiness with your husband, as you said, when you change the perspective to see that, everything changes. Life changes.
It does. Well, and the fact that I think so many people feel stuck in their situation and that they have no control. And I think the minute you realize that the control really is all in your hands and you can do something. And even is one of the things I really touch on is that, it's very simple to start taking steps towards creating a better life and creating a better marriage. And, you just have to take the steps. And I always say that men are the simple creatures. No offense, Walt, I'm saying that with the most love. It's there. So it's us, it's women who are complicated. We're, running out without keys out to a gate, and we're, and mad and all this stuff. And he's just like, I'd have done it. Like, I don't know.
Why'd you create this shitstorm for yourself?
Like, what are you doing? So I do. I'm like, so it's us settling down and saying, this is what we want. This is the story I'm going to write for myself. And then taking the steps to do it, and then getting over yourself, like getting over the fact that you expect someone to make you happy. You can't make it. Nobody can make you happy. You've got to make you happy. And then they are just this nice little side dish to it. Right. They just like, they accompany that. They just like fluff it up a little bit. So it's great to have somebody along when you already are happy.
Yeah, there's a lot of acceptance in this topic.
Absolutely.
Yes.
And a lot
Absolutely.
of practice with it too.
A lot of practice. And you're not always going to get it right. You're not always going to get it right. You're going to fail. I failed this morning, but then I picked it right back up.
There you go.
You know, so it is. It's an ongoing process, but you know, I think the fact that people can be a little bit more aware of the fact that they do have a say in what it looks like, and you can rewrite it, and you can do it at any given point, and you just got to take the first step.
And from where I'm sitting, more and more people are becoming aware of that.
Yeah, I think so. Well, maybe that's where social media is a good thing, right?
Yeah.
There's a lot of people out there talking about this stuff. And before, if you didn't know what was going on, you just thought it was you. You thought you were alone in it. And now people are realizing other people are going through it. You know, there's a lot of people now. I mean, 100 years ago, 50 years ago, 20 years ago, people weren't talking about the law of attraction like they are now.
Oh,
Now,
yeah.
now it's everywhere. You can see it, and you can see, oh my gosh, this is something. And especially if you had an experience with it, and you can go, wait a minute, other people have too. And so whether it's your marriage or parenting or whatever, there's always something online now that can draw you to it so that you can have a community of people that can help you get better.
Mm-hmm.
Very true. Yeah. I have conversations with people periodically on what's going on with society as a whole, what the trends are and so forth. And just yesterday, I had my annual eye checkup, make sure my eyes are all okay, and no change in prescriptions. So it was great. But I'm chatting with the assistant who's doing most of the basic test work so that the eye doctor can come in. And we were having a really interesting conversation about all the different ways that people are challenged, kind of like similar to what we're talking about here, the way we're challenged by the modern 21st century, the good things that are coming out of it, bad things and so forth. And we were agreeing on just about everything, which was fun, but a little bit spooky too. And then I found a way to reverse it, because I said, one thing I really find to be true is that each succeeding generation is smarter than the last one. She says, I absolutely disagree with you completely. And I mention this because it's indicative of the fact that we have this huge influx of information we're all dealing with, and we're growing from it in different ways at different times, at different speeds, some of us showing growth, others not showing growth, and so forth. And it's very easy to get sucked up in the idea that things are falling apart. A lot of people are sucked up in that idea right now. We're kind of in like we're stuck in the matrix. I can't tell you how many times people have been using that analogy with me lately. Lots and lots of times. We're all caught in this matrix and we just can't get out, and it's just a terrible, terrible thing. And yet there are also many people who are expressing viewpoints of hope and growth and excitement and breakthrough and so forth. And when I see it in the aggregate, I see a net increase. I see net improvement. I think it's one of the reasons why I say each succeeding generation is smarter. So sorry, Doc, I disagree with you, but I really think that things are improving. And that, I guess what I'm trying to say is mindset matters. There's an example of it. Which mindset do I want to carry in? I know which one I want to carry in. I want to carry in the mindset that says everything's getting better. And that's the way I look at it. And that's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
Great story. It's a great story. I think, that's just it. It's like you can tell which direction someone's going within just a couple minutes of talking to somebody, and just a couple minutes of meeting someone, which direction their life is going in. And they're choosing that, right?
Yeah.
Like everybody's choosing it. I mean, even with some of this, I've had to get off of some of the feeds on social media that weren't serving me. When it was sending me down like a spiral of, oh no, what's happening? So I just had to remove it, because it wasn't doing me any good. And so I feel like the more that people can try to find the good, that the more the good comes your way.
Great practice, by the way, pruning groups on Facebook. I love that one. Really good one.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I just pruned, but I have had 7 or 8 regional groups that I ran. I shut them all down.
Wow.
I shut every single one of them down over the weekend. I had somebody else who had been helping me with it, and she couldn't do it anymore. I said, okay, I'm done with this. I'm going to shut it down. And people were like, oh my God. But I also had people, I gave my reason. My reasoning why was, first of all, I was having trouble finding people, but also I was frustrated with the fact that Facebook does such a poor job of keeping bad actors out, and they like to blame group admins about that. which is silly because we have so little influence over it. I mean, we can kick people out of the group and so forth, but the amount of information we have compared to what Facebook has is, tiny, and yet somehow we end up getting blamed for it. So I just said, I'm done with that. I'm not going to do that anymore. And so I shut the group down. I got people saying, yeah, I get what you're coming from on that one. There's just another example of how different perspectives, different ways of looking at the exact same thing, leading to different results. And in this case, it's, well, I'm going to turn groups off because they aren't really helping me. Healthy thing, really healthy.
Yeah. I mean, people can have the same exact situation happen to them, the same thing, but how they react to it is how their life goes, So it's all in how you deal with each situation that comes your way.
Well, I can tell you, dealing with the situation that came our way today was really easy. I loved it. I'm enjoying it very much. I wish that we could keep going, but our hour is actually long past up, so we have to kind of find a place to draw it to a close. But we do have a few things we like to finish on before we get done with it. First thing is, I know you're in the midst of getting your website at some point put together and so forth, so all that isn't really ready. But I wonder, I mean, if somebody wants to reach out and just connect with you, do the online connection rather than the offline connection. Is that okay? Is that something? And how do they find you? How do they reach you?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, right now you can reach me on social media. You can reach me on Instagram at Heather SLMN. So it's just Heather Solomon. Just the Solomon has no O's. So Heather SLMN. Or you can find me at Listen Up Younger Self, which is the name of my podcast. listenupyoungerself@gmail.com. So you can email me there, or you can find me on social, and I'm happy to have conversations and to meet more people.
Beautiful. All right.
Yeah.
Second thing I like to do is, because I have such wonderful co-hosts like Jody Lynn, I like to ask my co-hosts for perspective. Now, Jody Lynn is actually probably one of the more active co-hosts, so she plays a very large role in the conversation, but she also has a perspective I don't have because I'm asking most of the questions, and that perspective gives her a really interesting viewpoint on what the conversation was about. So I always like to ask Jody Lynn, when you think about what we talked about for the last hour, what jumps out at you? How do you tie it all together? Really,
I think it really comes down to your podcast name, Listen Up Younger Self. I love that. If only I could go back and tell myself certain things, I guess I wouldn't have landed quite here at this point in my time. But I think it's so important what you're doing, having this teaching people and encouraging people to have a conscious understanding of who they are, and not being attached to good or bad in any way, just what is going on, who they are, and what do they truly want, and reminding them of the power that they have to change that perspective. And like you said, just that simple step of changing the story. It might not be perfect, but we'll get there with practice. So thank you so much, Heather, for the reminder today.
Thank you guys for having me on. I so appreciate it. It was so fun. I do appreciate it. Thank you.
Our pleasure as well. One last thing I always like to do too is I like to touch on something that doesn't get touched on, because you mentioned you have your podcast. I'm sure you were doing other podcasts, all the different ways that you're doing outreach, and we're living in the age where we're creating content all the time, free content. We're helping people. Once again, we don't like the Instagram, like the TikTok, people we don't even know we're influencing. We're helping them in ways we aren't even aware of, and we don't often get credit for that. So I like to say, Heather, on behalf of those people you've never met, never seen, never will meet, never will see, who you've been helping in ways you didn't even know about, on their behalf, thank you for what you're doing, because you're making a difference in this world.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for that. I appreciate that. Thank you very much. And so is this, obviously, very much. It's great what you guys are doing. Thank you.
Fantastic. So thank you much. Thank you to our podcast listeners everywhere. We'll see you all next time here on LOA Today. Goodbye, everybody.